time when you received an unexpected gift? Perhaps it was from a loved one or a dear friend. You glanced through the bag and you found your gift. Do you remember that feeling? Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and our honored guests, I want to share with you a particularly meaningful gift that my family received. In May of 2002, my husband was feeling uncharacteristically tired. His voice was changing, but he didn't want to go see the doctor because he didn't feel bad. He just didn't feel himself. In September, David thought he was being ravaged by seasonal allergies, so he broke down and went to see our doctor. After reviewing the symptoms, our doctor referred him to an ENT, an ear, nose, and throat specialist. The ENT ran routine tests. Those routine tests turned into diagnostic images. The diagnostic images resulted in a biopsy. My husband was diagnosed with squamous cell carcinoma of the tongue cancer. He referred my husband to a very straightforward oncologist who told my husband that the cancer was growing so rapidly, it was likely he had less than a 20% chance of being alive by Christmas. 3 months. That was a sucker punch to my family. My daughter Heather had just moved across state to start her new adult life. Our son William was a senior in high school, and our son Charles was in 8th grade. David told me at the time all he longed for was to live long enough to see our son William graduate the following spring. David began an aggressive experimental protocol. He had 5 days of targeted radiation, targeted at the base of his tongue. At the end of every week on Friday, he had chemotherapy. The radiation was so ravaging that after the second week, his throat was severely burned. He could no longer swallow anything. So he received a feeding tube so that he could take any oral supplements, nutrition, hydration, medicine, everything went through his feeding tube. In addition, due to the damage of his throat, David could no longer speak to us. Every communication that he gave us when he had the energy was through a written note. And if that weren't enough, through all of his treatments, David had a stroke. On November 30th, 2002, my husband was declared cancer-free. He beat it, and we rejoiced. We were so excited. As you know, though, just because you're declared cancer-free does not mean that everything is cured. Because of David's stroke, he had to learn to walk again. Because of the damage to his throat, it took over 2 years for him to gain his voice back, and he never fully gained his voice back. And he was on his feeding tube for about 3 years. In 2013, David was diagnosed with a second cancer, totally unrelated to his first cancer. It was abdominal cancer, it was stage 4 inoperable. This time, though, his treatment was 1 little bitty chemo pill per day. So different. He had that 1 little pill per day, and in 5 months, that inoperable tumor was removed. He went into the surgical suite, stage 4 cancer. He came out of the surgical suite, no evidence of disease, and we rejoiced again. In March of 2017, David was diagnosed with a recurrence of that cancer. He told me he was tired. He didn't think he had a year left to live. And I said, that's okay. We will make it the best year for you. David spent time with each of our children. He spent time with each of our grandchildren. He spent time with the friends who were very close to him. He was creating memories, not for him, for them. On August 15th, 2017, my children and I helped walk my husband David into the arms of Jesus. Now, if I were sitting in your chair, I'd be thinking the same thing you are. Good grief, Gina, with all of that going on, what could you possibly find as a gift? I'm sure you're all familiar with the saying, yesterday is history. Tomorrow is a mystery. Today is a gift from God. That's why we call it the present. Our gift was the gift of time. David earned 15 bonus years. With those 15 bonus years, David was able to see all 3 of our children graduate. He was able to see all 3 of our children marry. He was able to see our first 5 grandchildren being born. And David and I were able to spend an additional 15 wedding anniversaries together. So I ask you, what are you doing today to be present in the lives of those you love? Because I encourage you to start today while you still have the gift of time. Mr. Toastmaster.